Stepdaughter said that I'm not her real mom and shouldn't tell her what to do. You're a nothing to me or a nobody, so when it came time to pay for college, I told her to let her real mother pay for her tuition. I never thought I'd share this story, but I need to get it off my chest. My name's Robin, I'm 45, and I own a pretty successful restaurant in the city, a place I built from scratch and truly take pride in. About 5 years ago, my restaurant brought someone into my life who I believed was special at the time. James, name changed, was a contractor I hired for renovations. He was charming, hardworking, and had these kind eyes that made me trust him instantly. As we worked together, we started talking more. He told me about his daughter, Lisa, who was 13 then, and how he'd been raising her on his own ever since his ex lost custody because of her drinking. I looked forward to every chance we got to chat, and eventually, James asked me out for coffee. That coffee led to dinner, dinner turned into dates, and before long we were discussing marriage. Everything felt perfect, James was attentive, and Lisa was sweet. I finally thought I'd found the family I'd always wanted. We married a year into dating, and soon, James and Lisa moved into my home. At first, everything was wonderful. I threw myself into being the best stepmom possible. Lisa and I cooked together, went shopping, and I made sure she had everything she needed, family vacations, clothes, even little extras I wished I'd had when I was her age. Lisa did see her biological mom on occasion, which always made me uneasy given what I knew about her past. Her mom had almost burned their house down multiple times while drunk, which is why she lost custody. Still, James insisted it was important for Lisa to maintain that connection. She's still her mother, he'd say, adding that her mom had supposedly gotten sober. I once saw her at a school event, and she didn't seem sober at all, she swayed and her eyes were unfocused. I kept quiet, thinking, I'm just the stepmom, right? If only I'd known then what I know now, my desire to be the perfect stepmom blinded me to what was really happening. And believe me, the real trouble was yet to come. Time flew by, and soon Lisa was turning 18. She was stressed out about her birthday and graduation, pacing around the house and worrying that nothing would be perfect or that guests wouldn't show up. One evening, as I found her lost in anxious thoughts, I pulled her into a hug and said, everything's going to be fine. In fact, I have an idea, let's throw your party at the restaurant. We can book the best tables in the house. Her eyes lit up immediately. My restaurant had become quite the hotspot, and Lisa was excited to show it off on Instagram. Oh my God, my Instagram is going to be so lit. Everyone at school will be so jealous, she squealed. I dove into the party preparations, determined to make everything perfect for her. I even took her shopping for a dress, a gorgeous blue number that made her look so grown up. I nearly teared up in the fitting room. When I asked how many people she planned to invite, she hesitated and said, about 30. I asked if she could give me a guest list so I know we had enough space and food, but she quickly replied, just plan for 30. Looking back, I should have pushed harder about the list, but I was too caught up in making everything flawless. The day of the party arrived, and everything was amazing. The tables were beautifully decorated, the food was spot on, and Lisa looked stunning in her new dress. James's relatives were there, and Lisa's friends were busy snapping selfies. Then, she walked in. I immediately recognized Lisa's mom, even though she was swaying and clearly intoxicated. With glassy eyes, she announced to everyone that she was there to wish her daughter a happy birthday. I was sitting next to Lisa when her mom stumbled over to our table. She glared at me as if I were something stuck to her shoe, then got up and demanded, that's my seat. I'm her real mom, not you. I tried to keep my voice calm, suggesting, there are plenty of empty seats at the next table with the other guests. Why don't you join them? Instead, she practically shouted, no. This is my place. You need to get out, who do you think you are? I looked at James, hoping he'd step in, but he just sat there, his face turning red as he stared down at his plate. Taking a deep breath, I kept my voice steady despite the chaos unfolding in my own restaurant. Listen, I said firmly, you have two choices, either take a seat at the next table with the other guests, or I'll have security escort you out. Her face twisted with rage. Oh, listen to you, little moneybags, throwing your weight around, she spat, staggering slightly as she grabbed the table to steady herself. You think you can buy everything, buy my husband, buy my daughter's love? The other diners began to stare. I could see my regular customers trying not to listen, while my staff hovered at the edges of the room, waiting for my signal. You waltz in here with your fancy restaurant and big house, thinking money can replace me. Well, you can't buy family. Before anyone could react, she grabbed a plate and hurled it to the floor. The crash of breaking china echoed through the suddenly silent room. Then another plate, and another, as food splattered across the expensive carpet I had installed just last month. I caught the eye of my head of security and nodded subtly. They moved in quickly and professionally. "Ma'am, it's time for you to leave," the security chief said firmly, taking her arm. I watched as they escorted her out, her screams echoing down the hallway until the front door finally closed. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood up and put on my best restaurant owner smile. "I'm so sorry for the disturbance, everyone. Please enjoy your meals, drinks are on the house." Regular customers soon resumed their conversations, but at our table, where Lisa's friends and family sat, the whispers were constant. I knew by morning the story would be all over social media. Lisa sat there, pale as a ghost, pushing food around her plate. Her beautiful blue dress suddenly made her look even smaller and more vulnerable. The Instagram-perfect party she dreamed of had turned into a nightmare. After about an hour, she whispered, "I have a headache. Can we go home?" The party broke up quickly after that, as guests made polite excuses while I could still hear them whispering about how awful it was that her mom had shown up. Once we got home, Lisa went straight to her room. I followed her upstairs, wanting to comfort her. "Lisa, honey, can we talk?" I asked softly. I need to be alone right now," she replied, shutting the door in my face. In the kitchen, I found James staring into a glass of whiskey. "Did you invite her?" I asked quietly. "Did you tell your ex about the party?" He shook his head. "No, I wouldn't do that." And suddenly, it all made sense. Lisa had been so secretive about the guest list because she had invited her own mother, despite everything, the history, the custody issues. She wanted her there. The next morning at breakfast, Lisa came down looking like she hadn't slept at all. She slumped into her usual chair without making eye contact. "How are you feeling, sweetie?" I asked, trying to sound light. "Fine," she muttered, staring into her cereal bowl. And that was it, just one word. The days that followed felt like living in a ghost house. My bubbly, chatty stepdaughter became a stranger. Whenever I walked into a room where she was with James, she would go silent, as if someone had hit a mute button. One night after Lisa had gone to bed, I asked James, "Don't you think we should do something? Maybe get her to talk to someone?" He waved his hand dismissively. "She's fine, she's just processing what happened. Give her some space." But nothing was fine. Everything was far from fine. Despite the tension at home, we all showed up for Lisa's graduation. James and I sat in the audience, and I clapped until my hands hurt. When her name was called, she looked beautiful in her cap and gown, and for a brief moment, when she glanced our way and smiled, I thought maybe things were finally getting better. After the ceremony, we celebrated at home. I ordered all of Lisa's favorite dishes from the restaurant, mushroom risotto she loved, those little crab cakes she always swiped when she visited me at work, even that elaborate chocolate cake that takes 3 days to make. Her classmates arrived, and the house filled with laughter and excited chatter about college and summer plans. For a few hours, it felt almost normal again. Lisa was smiling and talking, just like she used to. I began to relax, thinking maybe we'd turned a corner. Then her phone rang. Lisa stepped into the hallway to answer it and returned a few minutes later with a determined look on her face. She walked straight up to me, the first time in days she had come to me on her own. "My mom's coming over," she announced. "She wants to congratulate me on graduating." My stomach dropped. "Absolutely not," I blurted, memories of the birthday disaster still fresh in my mind. "Lisa, think about what happened at your birthday. She showed up drunk, caused a scene, and ruined everything. That was all on you." "Lisa," she snapped, her voice rising, "none of that would have happened if you'd just given up your seat to her. She's my real mom, you should have just moved." I felt like I'd been slapped. All these days of silence, and this is what she thought, that I was to blame. I turned desperately to James, hoping he'd finally step up and be the father Lisa needed. "James, please say something, tell her how unacceptable her mother's behavior was at the party." But James just sat there, staring at his shoes as if they held all the answers, the same silent retreat I'd come to expect lately, the same cowardice I witnessed at the restaurant. And that's where my story stands. I never thought I'd share this, but sometimes I wonder if money and success can ever mend the broken bonds of trust and love. I'm still trying to figure out what family really means, and I know now that being family isn't about legal ties, it's about genuine care, support, and being there for each other through everything. It seems like you have provided a significant amount of text from your story. Would you like me to assist with editing, structuring, or rewriting any part of it, or do you have a specific request related to the story? Let me know how you'd like to proceed. For 21 seconds something inside me finally snapped after 5 years of trying to be the perfect stepmom, walking on eggshells and always making excuses for everyone else's behavior. I looked at Lisa and said, "This is my restaurant. I planned your whole party, and I even bought that dress you wanted so badly. I did everything I could to make it perfect, but your mother, she showed up drunk, caused a scene, and wrecked property. She didn't even bring you a present, she brought only chaos and embarrassment. In an instant, Lisa's expression shifted from anger to fury. Oh my God, here we go, she shouted, throwing her hands up. It's always about the money with you, isn't it? I paid for this, I bought that, do you really think that because you have money, you can control everyone and everything? Then she spun around to face her classmates, who stood awkwardly in our living room, clearly wishing they were anywhere else. My real mom will be here soon, she announced bitterly. It'll be nice to finally have a normal person here instead of, she gestured at me as if I were something filthy scraped off the bottom of her shoe. Your mother is not coming into this house. I tried to stay calm, my voice steady as I said, this is my restaurant, even as I struggled to hold my son steady amid the anger and hurt welling up inside me. But then, recalling what had happened at the restaurant earlier, Lisa completely lost it. Her face flushed red, and in front of everyone she screamed, "You're not my mother. You're nothing to me, you're nobody. Who do you think you are to tell me what to do? Keep your filthy nose out of my business. You're just some woman my dad married for his money." The room went dead silent. I saw Lisa's friends shifting uncomfortably, some staring at their phones, others suddenly fixated on the ceiling. With venom dripping from her words, Lisa turned to them and said, "Let's get out of here, I don't want to celebrate in our house anyway," stressing her like it were something disgusting. They all filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled, leaving me alone in a room littered with half-eaten food and abandoned plates, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. I thought, surely now James would say something, he'd stand up for me, right? Instead, he cleared his throat, his voice cold and hard. "You had no right to throw money, and our house, in her face like that. You didn't need to remind her that this is your house and that your money paid for everything." I stared at him, feeling like I was seeing him clearly for the first time. Are you kidding me? Where were you when your ex was throwing plates around my restaurant? And where were you just now when your daughter was screaming insults at me in front of her entire graduating class? You're the adult here, I snapped. You should know better than to get into arguments with a teenager and bury your head in the sand like a coward. He retorted, "That's what you do, isn't it? You sit there silently while your ex and your daughter treat me like garbage." I fired back, "Well, guess what? I'm done being everyone's punching bag." James's face darkened further, and without another word, he stormed upstairs. I even heard the guest room door slam a few minutes later. The next morning, breakfast felt like sitting in a morgue. James quietly pushed his eggs around his plate without meeting my eyes. I was about to get up and leave when Lisa stumbled in, still in her graduation party clothes. The smell of alcohol hit me before she even reached the table. I glanced at James, waiting for him to say something, anything, about our teenage daughter coming home drunk at 9 a.m. But he just continued studying his eggs. "Where have you been all night?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. Lisa glared at me, her bloodshot eyes filled with contempt. "None of your business," she sneered. "You're not my mother, you're not anyone. You're just an empty space taking up room in this house." Then she turned and staggered upstairs to bed. James remained silent, and I began to think that his silence was his superpower. The following week felt like living with a vindictive ghost. Lisa wouldn't speak to me directly, instead, she talked about me as if I weren't even there. "Dad, can you ask your wife to pass the salt?" she'd say, pointing at me like I was a piece of furniture. Or she'd walk into a room and announce to James, "This woman is in my way, move." I said nothing and just watched it all unfold. After 5 years of trying to be the perfect stepmom, I was done, ready to let them show their true colors, and boy, did they. Then, on Sunday, while James and I endured another silent dinner, Lisa burst into the dining room waving an envelope like she'd just won the lottery. "Dad, I got in," she shouted, practically dancing around the table. I watched her hug her father, both grinning from ear to ear. Then, with a smirk, she turned to him and said, "I'll never forget, tell your wife she needs to pay for my tuition." Something inside me snapped. I offered a smile, not a kind one, and said clearly, "I'm not paying for your college education. You've made it very clear that I'm not your mother, I'm nothing but an empty space. And guess what? This empty space's wallet is closed. Why don't you ask your real mother to pay for college?" Lisa's face flushed an alarming shade of red. "You vindictive expletive," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You're doing this to punish me, you're just evil." I stood there, feeling strangely calm as she hurled insult after insult. It was like watching a storm from behind a window. I saw the chaos, but it couldn't touch me anymore. "Dad," she cried, whirling toward James. "Make her pay. She has to pay. Tell her." James cleared his throat in that patronizing tone I'd come to despise. "Come on, honey, stop joking around. You know you need to pay for Lisa's education. I pushed my chair back, stood up, and declared, I've made myself perfectly clear. I will not pay tens of thousands of dollars in tuition for someone who's spent weeks telling me I'm nothing, someone who treats me like I'm less than dirt in my own home. Then I turned and walked out of the dining room as Lisa's screams followed me upstairs. I could hear her launching another tantrum, plates crashing, chairs scraping, theatrical sobs, like mother, like daughter, I thought grimly. Later, I sat in my bedroom as the chaos downstairs slowly died down. I knew it wasn't over. Sure enough, about 30 minutes later, my bedroom door burst open and James stormed in, his face flushed with anger. I'm sick of this, he spat. I'm so tired of you playing these games. You need to grow up and pay for Lisa's education. I looked at him calmly from our bed. No, you and your ex can figure out how to pay for Berkeley. I'm sure between the two of you can work something out. He began pacing the room like a caged animal. You're being completely selfish. She's just a teenager, for God's sake. You're the adult here, you need to be the bigger person. I watched him pace, recalling all the times he'd used that same excuse, be the bigger person, let it go. She's just a kid, one who's made it very clear how she feels about me. Why should I invest in her future when she's shown nothing but contempt? I said quietly. James stopped pacing and turned to face me, his expression hard. Fine. Let me make this simple, either you pay for Lisa's education or I'm filing for divorce. He clearly expected me to cave, to break down, cry, or beg him not to leave, as if that were what being the bigger person meant. I shrugged. Okay, get a divorce. The look on his face was almost comical, his mouth moved, but no words came out. He clearly hadn't expected me to call his bluff. I'll call my lawyer first thing tomorrow morning. In the meantime, you and Lisa should start looking for a new place to live. James stood there for what felt like forever, staring at me as if he'd never seen me before. Finally, without another word, he turned and left the room, closing the door quietly behind him. The next morning, I walked downstairs to find James and Lisa sitting at the dining table, waiting like an ambush. The scene was perfectly staged, Lisa with red-rimmed eyes, and James sporting that practiced, concerned father expression. Honey, James, he said with that manipulative smile I'd come to loathe, we've all had a chance to calm down and think about things. Lisa nodded eagerly, like a well-trained puppet. We all overreacted yesterday, she added sweetly. I stood in the doorway, a strange sense of clarity washing over me, as if I were truly seeing them for the first time. The thing is, James continued in that measured tone he used when he wanted something, we're family. Families fight, but they also make up. And since you escalated this college situation, it would mean a lot if you took the first step toward reconciliation. Lisa jumped in immediately, yeah, and if you help with tuition, it'll show you're really sorry and want to make things right. I almost laughed. They really thought a bit of fake remorse and rehearsed lines about family would work on me. I pulled out my phone and said, I just got off the phone with my lawyer, 5 minutes ago, the divorce papers should be ready this afternoon. In an instant, Lisa's sweet smile vanished, replaced by shock, and James's face turned that familiar angry red. I looked straight at Lisa and said, congratulations, you won't have to deal with your non-mom interfering in your life anymore. Isn't that what you wanted? Lisa burst into genuine tears this time, none of those calculated ones from before. I was done being manipulated by teenage tears. James stood up so fast his chair toppled over, and without a word, he stormed upstairs. I could hear him yanking drawers, slamming closet doors, the sound of suitcases being packed and doors slamming shut. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. That night, messages started pouring in. First from James, we all said things we regret, let's talk like adults. Then from Lisa, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but you're being really unfair about college. When I didn't respond, the messages got nastier, you're destroying this family with your stubbornness. I hope you're happy being alone with your money, you'll regret this when you're old and have nobody. The divorce was quick, thanks to the prenup I insisted on. James tried to contest it, of course, but my lawyer shut him down fast. He got nothing, not a penny of my restaurant's profits, not a dime of my savings. I hear bits about them sometimes through mutual friends. They're now living in a small apartment across town, Lisa couldn't afford Berkeley and is working at a mall somewhere, and James is trying to restart his contracting business, though it's not going well. I've redecorated the house since they left, tossing out all the furniture that reminded me of them. The place feels bigger now, lighter somehow, or maybe it's just me, finally free of the weight of trying to buy love from people who were only ever interested in selling.